Good morning, everyone. This is Ron, and this Saturday morning, a little after 10 a.m. Uh, we're already into March of this year, 2023, and hope you've had a good week. Hope everyone's had a good week. Uh, so we'll do as we normally do, start off with questions. See if we have any questions or comments on anything you've seen, observed, or uh, would like to talk about. Okay. Um, I have something I want to talk about briefly, and we'll see how long this goes and where we go from there, uh, how long this takes. Um, a few weeks ago, George brought up music. He specifically talked about hip hop, and that kind of piqued my curiosity. Uh, and I wanted to look at music, not necessarily hip hop, but music in general, and get a look at it and in relationship to man in the earth, the history of it, and us, the people on this phone. Uh, just kind of pull those things together and see what comes out of it. There's so much out there on music. Uh, Looking at the history of it, and there is some, of course, arguments as to the first music uh, coming out of Africa or what parts of the world that it came from. That did not necessarily wasn't what was important to me, I suppose. But just looking at some of the things that jumped out at me was the use of music, particularly with indigenous people, the people of the Americas. At first I looked at, and when I say the Americas, I don't just mean North America, but the tribal people of South America and Mexico and all these areas that in the Western Hemisphere even that were inhabited by people, we'll say, native to the land. All of them had strong spiritual roots, and all of them believed in uh, the oneness of being with nature. And was a music was a very strong influence in that direction. For example, the indigenous people believed that uh, all of nature spoke to each other. And so when you talk about the grasshopper or the crickets at night, those were all messages. Those were all done through music. Uh, those sounds, the sound of the wind coming through the leaves and the trees was a type of music that okay. Well, the type of music that we'll get into in just a second. The waters flowing, uh, and as they learn to use instruments, they would celebrate anything from the birth of a child to uh, someone who may have transitioned was a celebration. Uh, how to work, they made songs for children, uh, and that's the creativity of going through all of that. And in fact, I forgot about something. I wanted to. I had a song that this tribal person wrote, and I'm going to try to find it again. And I thought it was beautifully done. But just some of the things that hold on here. you guys work with me here.
Well, before you find that, I can add some to that discussion.
Yes, sir.
So in terms of how we in the physical experience sort of recreate and attempt to reproduce a spiritual experience that we remember on a subconscious level, music is very much our attempt to communicate with a language that is not so intellectual, because sort of we are instinctually aware of the fact that our sort of intellectual or analytical capacity does not have the ability to interface with the experience of a energy vibration. And so music is very much a way to communicate an experience that we have that is sort of outside of the ability of our intellect to define or encompass, or at least attempt to do that. And that's the same with any sort of artistic thing that we do. It is the desire to communicate the feeling. It is the desire to communicate a vibration, a experience that is more fundamental to our spiritual nature, as opposed to something that the intellect can sort of turn over in the way that it wants to. And that even can that applies to everything that we do. So when you use hand gestures when you speak, hand gestures when we speak are a way to attempt to communicate the feeling or the quality of the message that we know that are sort of on whatever intellectual level that language or discussion is happening, that quality can't be conveyed that way. So hand gestures are an artistic expression of what it feels like to experience the energy that we wish to communicate, if that makes sense. Thank
Yes,
you.
it does. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nick. But I was, yeah,
Also, in addition to what Nick was saying and you were talking about, that's where parables, the metaphors in the scriptures came from. They were arithmetic, and they were designed to communicate in such a way that if you were not spiritually inclined, I won't use the word initiated, but spiritually inclined, you would not understand what they were talking about. And that is one of the reasons we get so confused when it comes to reading Eastern philosophy or the what is it? Not parables, is another word. Yeah, it's parables. The Eastern parables that we use to describe stuff. It takes a village to raise a child is simple, but it entails everything that you and Nick talked about. And raising a child is not so much sitting that child down teaching it as much as it is being expressive of who you are and how you communicate in the presence of that child, as with the music and all other things.
sure. Any questions about this, y'all? Any further comments?
Yeah, when you look at like the Book of Psalms or any like books of poetry that came out of ancient spiritual systems, it was a similar thing. And in accordance with the practices of some of the spiritual traditions, the music helps you go into a different state of consciousness. And we're probably all familiar with that sort of concept of sort of hearing drums or using drums to sort of enter a different state of consciousness in various native or indigenous peoples' spiritual practices, particularly African, Native American, and a lot of places. But the purpose of all of that is to attempt to create a vibration that resonates at a deep level within, so that you can sort of awaken to that aspect of self that is being resonated. Thank you.
That kind of makes sense because we are energy, and music is made also with vibrational energy, and so it transcends a verbal message. It reaches us at a deeper level, at a very vibrational resonant level, because it speaks to us that way.
Aren't we also vibrational energy too? When you look at how the atoms are made, okay.
Yep.
And why? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
Well, I was going to say, sort of on the more purely metaphysical way, or in terms of the metaphysical description, we are, in reality itself, is a construction of light and sound. So vibration and the substance, for lack of a better term, that is being vibrated, or that is doing the vibration. And the construction of reality itself is made through a particular vibrational geometric frequency of spirit itself. So music resonates harmonically with certain aspects of the very foundation or structure of spirit, of ourselves, and of reality itself. And that relates to language as well, because language is vibration when we speak it. And Hebrew and I think also Sanskrit, probably some other languages as well, there are certain languages that are closer to they're a better representation of the metaphysical and spiritual harmonic structure of reality and spirit itself. And that is why they sort of are considered magical languages. And that's sort of where that comes from, or what that is. It's a relationship between the vibration you are, and that we make internally and externally, and to sort of the greater reality that we are a part of. And it is in understanding the relationship between the vibration of the macro and the vibration of the micro that you get that sort of ability to draw down what we would call miraculous events or things through the use of vibration, as consciousness facilitates that activity. Does that make sense? Hopefully that's not too much.
No, not at all. Not at all. Questions, y'all? I want to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Pastor.
I think it's important that we grasp what's being said, especially now, because this is an aspect of vibration, or this is an aspect of rhythm. This is an aspect of being one with the universe that we have not ventured into understanding. We know about music, but the spiritual aspects of it are extremely important on this journey. Why? Because we are able to speak to each other through music in a way that we cannot totally explain without having some type of relationship with the spiritual nature that we are, or the spirit that we are, and understanding that, as Nick said, it is vibration and light. When we see those two together, when we are able to grasp that, it gives us a better understanding of what is expected of us by our Creator, meaning that the more we become aware of the aspects of our characteristics, the greater opportunity we have to be in total, to be consistent, rather, in our vibration, our vibrating with the universe itself. And the more we do that, as Nick said, we're able to draw in those things that we call miraculous. However, in order to do that, we must be humble, and we must also be desirous of understanding, not just for yourself, but for humanity. Because the idea of take a village to rear a child, if you take that out, open it up a little further, you will see that village rearing a child is not just a physical baby or toddler. This is talking about also it takes a village to raise the awareness of everyone else in that village, because we are a child when it comes to spirituality, especially those of us who were brought into this country involuntarily. Thank you.
And to kind of speak to that, I'm just going to throw some stuff out here that's kind of factual that I hope is supporting what you guys are saying, and I invite you to keep talking on it, okay? The indigenous people believe that, and I'm talking about all indigenous people, even the Africans, and the who were native in the Americans as well. They talk about the expression of music. Music is an expression of being one with the universe, being one with all of nature, and that is why they could hear music in the rocks. You put a rock in the water, and the rock makes a certain sound. They could hear cycles in music, meaning that the earth is constantly going through a renewing and a refreshing and a rebirth. They talked about certain songs they sang in the mornings when the sun came up, because the earth is being reborn. These sort of things. So the wind, anything could be made into a musical instrument, and they believed that the voices, whenever you could play music, but when you hummed, when you put a voice to it, it invited the ancestors to join you. So when they sang the birth of a child, or even a funeral, when they do their chants of their mourning, it was the ancestors coming to get those who have transitioned. So all of this was about oneness. All of it was about community. And I have not seen anything with any village or tribe or anything that did not talk about the community of music, the tying together of the people and the oneness of it. So all of it to me was not as only on that.
Think about what you just said. When you talk about the ancestors being summoned, or the ancestors, knowing that the ancestors are coming to see someone into their presence, when a certain rhythm is produced. We have been taught that is ancestor worship when it really isn't. We have been taught to stay away from anyone who says that because that is satanic. We have been taught those things by those who do not understand the actual vibration or the unicity that humanity has with the earth, with the universe itself. When there are times, if you close your eyes and you're sitting especially outside in the midst of trees, you can feel the breeze, but if you listen, you can hear it, but you hear it differently than you would hear it if you're not focusing on it. So we are actually reintroducing or making everyone aware of, not just on this phone, but I'm talking about macro as well. We are refreshing the memory of the role that our ancestors played in our lives. When we talk about ancestry, we are talking about being in the presence of God. If we are Elohim in these bodies, are we not Elohim when we leave these bodies? So the cloud or the cloud of ancestors who are always present around us and with us, they are the God whose presence we go into when we leave this body, not the God that was created by religion. And I hope that I'm clear on what I'm making probably a feeble attempt to explain or to present. Thank you.
Good stuff, y'all. I'll throw something else out there.
Ron,
Go ahead.
I just have a quick comment
Yes, ma'am.
to what Pastor was saying. I kind of feel like when those indigenous people talked about ancestors, I think to a great degree, they were also talking about the Creator himself, because they would have, in their folklore, they would have known that they were created by a higher being, and this was a being that their parents and grandparents and ancestors worshipped. So the calling of the ancestors would be, I think, more of a call to the Creator because of what the Creator represented to them. And the fact that their physical ancestors look to that Creator as their sustenance and their spiritual oneness.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense.
No, I think they're both. You cannot talk about those who transition being ancestors without talking about referencing our Creator as well. I agree with you 100% because we are one yet many. I will sing.
Yeah. let me add this part to it, and we'll continue on this. We have been taught that when a young man in the indigenous tribe reached a certain age, that he was to go out and hunt something and bring back, and that was his transition into manhood. This, from my looking at this, was a whole lot more to this. The whole lot more is the fact that what he learned by going out with the men was the uniqueness and the oneness of that group going out together. And they would have song before the men will go and hunt. And a lot of times the women would be left in the village singing in celebration. So what this young man was to do, he was to understand that I am, and this is my way of saying it, I am the magnet that draws these things together. The song and me going out into the forest, if you would, or the jungle, however you want to look at it, is to draw. It wasn't that I'm going to chase down this animal. The animal and I are going to become one, because the animal, through nature, through song, knows that it is a part of what I am in need of. So the animal becomes, if you would, giving itself to the village. So as he becomes one and see who he is, it is not so much that the village is going to starve if I don't succeed. It is that if I grow into who I am supposed to be, if I see myself as being one with this animal, being one with this jungle, and being one with my village, I cannot fail. So the becoming a man thing had more to do with being responsible and being in one with nature, and being able to read the signs of nature while you were out there, all in being in rhythm. All of it had to do with being in rhythm. And if he understood this rhythm and didn't fight against it or become frightened, that he could not fail. So I just thought that was a lot more interesting than what we have been taught here. Go out there and take this bow and you go out there and kill this animal. It was a lot more thought, a lot more spirituality, if you would, and love put into that than to just go out there and do this.
Well, Ron, this is Richard. If I can interject a bit or add into that, I hesitated to say something in the beginning of when you asked if there were questions or comments, but we're circling around it. To me, in a certain respect, as I remember and I understand, the most important journey of sort of coming into adulthood, because women had their equivalent, wasn't that the young man went out with the others. He ultimately had to go out alone and stay out for a long period of time, and then the awarenesses and visions that he came back with helped to structure what his ultimate name was, et cetera, et cetera. So I only say that to bring us back to the concept that in these societies and most native ones, it still came back to you and your connection to all that is. And the question I was going to raise in the beginning at our comment, and I just put it just posted on the refrigerator of subjects, was because to me we're circling around it a little bit. The concept of self. We've talked about ancestors, we've talked about reincarnation, planes of existence, etc. But maybe I'm wrong and missed it, but I don't think we've really gotten into the substance of the notion of self as a part of this bigger journey, if you like. And of course, that's very specific to what this young person in the tribe would be about in this sort of initiation into adulthood, if you like, of going into the wilderness by himself and bringing back what truths and awarenesses he could gain, he or she. Okay, anyway.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. I want to say that because I meant that he went out for a second. I didn't explain it that way, but and I appreciate you doing that. But his going out with the men and the other boys was for him to observe and to be a part of and to see this and experience it, so that when he went out on his own, he'd know what to experience. So you're exactly right. I missed that part. I was saying it so fast. He go out with the group, but he go out with the expectation of learning to and seeing how they communicated with nature and with each other. And
Well, yeah, that's fine, but yeah, that would be, if you like, the sort of preparation for what ultimately is his individual task.
individually, yeah.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. You go out on, yeah. I didn't say that correct.
Richard, you're both of you guys. You're right. Also, when he's out there alone, he's understanding or being taught to appreciate the oneness of that he has with nature. He's sent out there to actually hear the animals, hear the wind, and understand that he's not separate from anything that he observes or that is brought to him while he's out there. And in doing so, what he finds out is that self means that he is one with everything that is. Because when we talk about self in terms of the Eastern perspective versus the Western perspective, they are two different entities. My self is no different than my community. Whatever I do reflects on my family, my community, and that's how we grew up. Knowing that, and most of us did. When your parents said to you, or that, don't forget you're Johnson, what were they saying? You're not. Self doesn't mean that you're one entity. The Eurocentric individualism is different than Eastern understanding of self. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Well,
Yeah. Go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to dominate here, but I guess, yeah, I understand, and we can go into a long conversation about this sort of construct of self and how it serves us well or inhibits us in this, to borrow from Nick's terms, plane of existence. But we all understand what the Buddhists say, that the concept of self ultimately is an illusion. So I just wondered if with a Christian Judaic background, scriptural background, our own beliefs and findings in this group and our discussions, what we really believe and feel in ourselves, and there's no judgment about this notion of self as it relates. Yes, we talk about as it relates to what we go into nature and find around us and how it helps or hinders our connectedness. But then in a larger sense, what of that might we understand we carry into the next, what do I say, existence? And just as a footnote, I recommend anybody, even if you know you're only going to do it for 1 or 2 nights, if you can get out in the woods, in nature, by yourself and spend a night or two with very little things and just try to sit there and really meditate. For me anyway, well, this was years ago, it was very profound. Anyway, so I just offer that as you're never too old to go do it. And And it's never something short of a wonderful experience in my understanding.
Okay. To what we're saying, and I in looking at this study, because I started looking at this stuff a couple of weeks ago, and just a little bit gradually here and there, and in different music genres, and the history of this and that, and I narrowed things down to looking at the origin of music, and being really intrigued by how the indigenous people, regardless of what continent they were on, how they viewed music. And the retreat that Richard is describing, I haven't gone camping since I was a kid, but I would agree that anytime you can find time to spend with nature is an extraordinary experience. Also, though, to my surprise, in looking at what music was in to the indigenous people, and again, regardless of where they were or where they are, it was all inclusive. What they believed was the wind does not belong to me, the rock does not belong to me, the blade of grass that creates the sound does not belong to me, the skin that the buffalo that gave his life for me to make this drum from the skin does not belong to me. So any sound, any vibration that I can enhance from this does not belong to me. So my creativity from this, my joy that brings about this music is community. It was all done for community, and I and the community are one. So if I am if I am an expression of joy internally in my heart, then it should show through my creativity. So that creativity was selfless, and it was made to be shared. It was made to be born. That's why I went into the cycle and the rebirthing of the earth every morning. As you become aware of these sounds and these vibrations, you see yourself as the community, and the community is you. So I agree, it is an observation that we first gather from an individual perspective, but just as we have, and this was going to be sort of the conclusion I wanted to bring with looking at this, is we all individually started off, even before we met, trying to figure out how we individually gain salvation, though we may have been led to God, a form of God, by our mothers or our fathers or our grandparent or whoever, but we came to the place where we wanted to see God for ourselves. And as we started that journey from whatever place we started from, we were born into a community as to where we are now. So Barbara Simmons and Ronald Johnson and James Richard and Charles and Sheldon and everybody else, we're all one. And we see in the community, and we feel that in the vibrations and the meditations, it's all what it's about. It's all the same energy. So that I was hoping the conclusion takes us to. May have the origin of it may have been individually, but it has also blossomed into the more, and the more is the drop of water is not just a subset of the ocean. The drop of water is the ocean, and I am the ocean, and your drop of water is the ocean, and we are one. So it's a concept that may not be easy to grasp, but I'm hoping we can get a clearer picture of it by studying and looking at it from the rhythm of music.
Ron, also, if you look at it from the perspective of the example you gave about the Native American and the buffalo, or if it was, or the animal and the indigenous people, if it were not for the animal, there would not be a drum.
Yes.
And if it were not for the drum, there would not be music from that drum. And if it were not one who hears the vibrations in his soul, there would be no chords or no sound or no message given from the playing that drum. And without the messenger playing the drum, the ears would not hear what's being said, even though it's not verbalized. But all of these things are connected, because you can even start before the animal. If it were not what the animal ingests, giving up its life, there would be no life for that animal. One for the animal, no life for us, etc., and so on and so on. So everything is truly connected. I think one of the things that causes us to lose our sense of oneness is not only our religion, but is our everyday life, because we have been conditioned to believe that we don't need anyone, and that we can either purchase or make anything that we need. However, if we look at this sense of being one and embrace it, we will understand that is the reason that indigenous people make every effort to use every aspect, every part, rather, of that animal that it kills to survive. Its bones, everything in it, they make every attempt to utilize it, and they don't take more than what they need to survive, because, as you said, they understand it does not belong to them. It belongs to everyone, every inhabitant in this earth. It belongs to all of us. And if we take it and preserve it continuously, then what happens when it's depleted? And we can see that quite clearly when we talk about overfishing. We see the idea of deer hunting for the purpose of killing an animal, that kind of thing. If people love deer as much as they say they do, then they will be selling it in the grocery stores. So this is a sport as opposed to survival. Thank you.
Good morning, Ron, and everyone.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. When you started, our session speaking about music and speaking about vibration, it just made, me reflect a little bit in terms of returning to the beginning, where we can appreciate how the Kush, Kemetic, enshrine the owl as a symbol of wisdom, because they respected, its ability to see light and intelligence in the dark and ignorance. But I'm referring in reference to the owl, because the owl, was a very, significant animal with regards to, wisdom. And so when we look at, the symbols, when we talk about the Medu Neter, which is part of the hieroglyphics, we can just see from the beginning, that, the spirit or man realized the importance of nature, teaching us how to be receptive to being one in the spirit and being one, with nature. And so the wise old owl is something that I just wanted to mention because it talks about the importance of sound. And the number 13 in the alphabet is the letter M. And when we look at the letter M, it has its energy and vibration as we talk about the vocalization of the sixth chakra. And again, it all is one in that oneness, but it has some characteristics that I just wanted to just share, just a little bit about in terms of the power of the M sound. And it says that when we hum M or Om or the sounds of conscious life, it says M is a primordial sound from which other sounds are generated. So in creation myths throughout the world, song or sound brings life. And humming is one of our first sounds. And this sound is universal to humans and animals alike. But humming is a universal sound, one of the first sounds we make while they talk about breastfeeding. And so again, it brings us back to Mother Nature, that we can appreciate again, how M sound is invoked from the mother realm. And so I think it ties back to our beginning where we can see the importance of the oneness, but the nurturing that nature gives us in terms of how we're able to interpret those thoughts. And that M sound is powerful, and it definitely, reflects in terms of learning. I want to share those thoughts.
That's really interesting, George. And it answers a question about why people like George Floyd and Tyre Nichols called out for mom when they were being abused.
Yeah, and again, Audrey, I think just some interesting points I'll just share while you mention that. It says M is a sound associated with the mother realm. Is the first sound made by a newborn infant. The sound is made when the baby is nursed by her or his mother. Consider the many different words consider the many different words from mother around the world. Mama, ama, madre, matter, ma, or nut. So again, M is a sound, a bonding that transcends species, cows and sheep to be, below or bleat a deep low after giving birth to signal that is time to nurse. And this last note I just mentioned is that M is the automatic sound of satisfaction of a good therapist knows this instinctive and has a variety of ways to say to let their clients know that they are understood. So again, I think there's just a lot in there that we can learn from the owl, and at the same time, again, I think it's relevant to what we're talking about. So thanks for letting me share those thoughts again. I'm done.
Thank you, George. I had a thought when you were speaking and you brought up the owl and the sounds. My mind always goes back to Genesis, but he tells the man it is not good for you to be alone, and then he brings the animals. Could it be that not only naming the animals talk about the character, but the sound and the vibration? If you become familiar with these sounds and vibrations that are in you, and you become one with your femininity, you can bring balance into the whole entire earth. But you will not be balanced if you use these as instruments of destruction and not as instruments of love. Then you will not see who you are. I don't know. That just kind of came to me. Another way of seeing him naming the animals. But anyway, let's see. couple other things, points I wanted to make. Looking at, let me ask you this: out of all the music that we are credited with creating in America, whether you're talking about funk, blues, jazz, soul, hip hop, rap, what do you think would be the oldest music in America for Africans? Anybody?
Church music.
Say
I
that
mean,
again,
just
Ron?
singing related to
Huh.
church
No,
You are
I
or
think it's
drumming.
the oldest music that is mentioned or believed to be is gospel. Listen to this. When they were taking them, before they took them off of ships, they were trying to teach them English. They were making them stop speaking, stop the music, stop the humming, everything, because they thought they were communicating, because they knew they were from different regions. And they thought they were communicating with each other. They also thought they were talking to their gods. So they stripped them of everything, outwardly and inwardly. If you can see that, outwardly and inwardly. So as they learned to speak English, and Christianity was forced on them as fast as the language was, they grasped onto the first life raft they could find to keep from drowning. Gospel music was born. Gospel music was born to the slave before he came off the ship. Is that not amazing? They had nothing else to grasp, y'all. So they're trying to pull something in that makes sense of what is happening to them. And if you say this is what God looks like and I have nothing else to pull on, I have no choice. And that is why Christianity is so much in our DNA. When we say we literally died for it, we literally died for it. So when we look at this in the history of it all, and again, there is no coincidence that when the slave was established in America, the first thing he did, he made drums and a banjo. He made drums and a banjo. Why? There was an instrument in Africa called a lute. And what a lute was, it was a string instrument that had a long neck to it, and you take like a tree trunk or something hollowed out, and you could manipulate that hollowed part or the thickness of that tree trunk to make different sounds, or the different vibrations or different thickness of the cord that you put on made different sounds. And what they finally recognized was you could take that lute and whatever, let's say you put thin bow or thin string on that and took a thicker string, or vice versa, put a thick string on the lute and took a bow, you created an even different sound, playing those strings against each other. So there was born the fiddle and the violin. All of that was a part of Africa, and all of that was brought over into the Americas when they came. So, and this was another one, as I explained this to Pastor earlier. The funny thing was, one of the early, another early part of music, the next one that was developed was the blues. And George mentioned hip hop that day, and this is where I want to tie in. A lot of music came y'all. It's therapeutic to feel the pain and have nowhere to express it, to feel the hurt or the frustration and have no way to express it. And that's what blues allowed to do. And one of the things that I was telling Pastor was a lot of what the farmers would do, what these plantations would do, is after work every day, they come home and make instruments, they make drums, they make guitars or banjos out of whatever material they could. And the funny thing about it, I was mentioning to him, was you could go anywhere in the South and you hear the men playing the same tone music, the same chords of music. Where did they get that from? They taught themselves how to sing, and throughout the whole South, they were all playing the same type of blues. Maybe not the same words, but the same harmony, the same rhythm, because they were getting it from the atmosphere. It was a sense of community. It was what the community needed. So it later blossomed out, and it all blossomed out to what we know now as hip hop and other type of music. But if you go to country music, if you go to jazz, all of it was born from these same roots. And ironically, the first blues album, and I can't remember the name of the group, but the first blues album recorded was an album from a white band, and I thought I wrote it down and I didn't. But what they did, the black musicians could not get record deals. So the white musicians would go to New Orleans and play with them and learn what instruments they were using and come back and get record deals. So the first, you look this up and you see that this was done by this band and that band. It's because they went to New Orleans to learn how to play this, and still, had their own versions of it. But not only was music, or still is, therapeutic to us, it is something that is as old as time, because the earth has always had a rhythm. The earth has always had that energy, that same energy that flows through the hearts of men. So as we become one with that, if we see that, those expressions have become, some of them have become, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of wild or untamed. Some of them have become, again, like I'm talking about the animals, naming the animals. We some of the music has embraced the violent side of it, that is not in harmony with the universe, that is from a selfish place, that is from and all of it is an expression. But some of it is not harmonious to nature itself. So that's kind of what I had. Any questions and or comments?
Hey, Ron.
Yes, sir.
A classic example of what you're saying, I think, is James Brown. No matter where you are, no matter what he sings, you always know that it's his music. And James Brown was told that the music, the rhythm, or the beat that he wanted would not work because it was outside of the realm of what those guys had been taught. And he did it anyway. And what happened when he did it with sound from his mouth. He had no training at all, no formal training in music. He told them to play what he was hearing. And he has the most unique music that's out there now, even from now. So I just want to give us an example, hopefully, that all of us are familiar with, to undergird or to add to what you were saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
I have a question. How can we say that gospel or this particular music how can we say that gospel come first, was the first music, when music has always been here? Maybe I'm missing it. Yeah. How can we say that gospel is the first that come here, the first music? I mean, help me understand, please.
What I'm saying is, when they were coming off the slave ships, they were being taught Christianity and English. Stop talking in your. I'm stripping you away of everything. You're not going to dress the way you dress. You're not going to look the way you always look. Your music is going to be taken away from you. Your culture, everything is going to be stripped away from you. So what I'm saying is, here you are beaten. You're seeing people that are being that are dying on this voyage, and you're seeing the brutality, and you have nothing to hold on to. And so what do you grasp? You grasp the God that they're giving you. The God that they're giving you is Christianity. And that's all you can see. That's all you understand at this point, because you don't dare see anything else. So you put that to music. You put that to the music that is inside of you, because that's the only way they let you express yourself. So it started off as them trying to find a vibration that they were familiar with, trying to find that rhythm that brought them comfort. But they could not use their own words. They had to use the words of Christianity.
Ron,
Ron,
what I
are
hear
you
Evelyn
saying, though, is that even before then you had music, because you had David dancing in the street, and you had so you're talking about the current era, because there was
Yeah,
music.
yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
that's
I'm
what
talking about. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm talking about.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
The Americas, the African in the Americas, because that's why I named themes of music that we are credited with the gospel, hip hop, soul music, R&B, funk, blues, jazz. That's why I named all those. Those are all genes of music that the African in America is credited with creating. But the first of those was the gospel. That's what I'm saying. I'm sorry.
That makes sense. That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you for the question.
I can kind of understand what Evelyn's saying, because even though they got that music, they still sung it to their own rhythms, and especially like the, what do you call that a cappella choir in the Black churches? Anyway, there was no music to those. They sung those songs to their own internal music. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I do what you're saying. Yeah. And you even reminded me of we were, I forget what lesson we were talking about, and Sheldon brought up the grandmother or someone sitting on the porch humming. All of that is part of it. The rhythm and the vibration has always been there. Yes, I couldn't agree more. That has always been there. And as the African, we are a great part of that, keeping that vibration in the earth.
Hey, Ron, this is Charles. Now, not only music, the African had their own way of dancing, and they danced to the music in a way that Caucasians liked it, the way they were dancing, and it trickled on down till now. Caucasian and black people dance the same way now.
Can I speak to that one?
Please, sir.
The dances that the Africans were doing were different dances, meaning that there was a dance to welcome people to the village. There was a dance when people left. There was a dance they did in honor of our Creator. There was a dance they did in marriages. So the dances denoted something. One of the dances back in the day was called the Watusi. That dance was directly from South Africa. And in the Americas, there were dance movements that we did that mimicked the dances in Africa. We had in one of our programs a lady who taught the different dances and the purpose for each one of them. And that's when I know it wasn't her, but that's when I noticed how similar the dances were, even though they were a little different. So Charles, music speaks to everyone, and when you are in tune with the rhythm of that music, then your body begins to move differently through that music. We talk about people being offbeat. We talk about people having no rhythm. Both of those are the same thing. And eventually, there are people who will be in rhythm with the music. Therefore, you cannot paint everyone with the same brush when it comes to the way that they or we or anyone responds to music in the form of dance. I hope that answers your question. If not, I'm sure someone else can clear it up for you. Thank you.
Okay, that answered.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you for your question. Thank you, Pastor. I think, and this is just, I think music is an expression of the human experience, and I think it is an opportunity to become one with nature and to be in harmony with who you are created to be. And that all music in different degrees is spiritual. And so that is the quest of man, and what we do is to reach that harmony and to be one with ourselves in the universe, and to show that expression to other people, how to be there. I think that's what the scripture discusses when it says all of creation moans, in Corinthians. I can't remember where exactly, but I hope this is being helpful, and I don't want it to. Is there any other questions or anything that? Because I sometimes talk fast and think I'm saying stuff I'm not saying. So
I got one more question, Ron.
okay.
Why do they say? I might be saying it wrong, but you correct me. Why do they say the music soothes the soul?
Well, and someone else can add to this as well, but for the very things I think we're just saying, Charles, it's the same energy that is in us. That rhythm and that vibration just it just you can feel a baby kicking in the womb from hearing certain types of music. It's just the vibration of it, and we don't think sometimes that even the solid parts of us, our physical makeup, contains water. Most of us water, and we feel that vibration. So it does. It gets into you, and it moves you from an inner place. So that's what I think is referring to. But yeah, anyone else?
Yeah.
Ron, this is Evelyn. Oh, I'm sorry, I yield.
Oh, I mean, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I listened to the OJs. They got this song called I Love Music. And they talk about how music is the healing force of the waters. And you have to listen to the song. But yeah, they tell a good story on why we love music. But that's all I wanted to say, Nick. Thank you.
Yeah, just to contribute to that, the vibration touches a deeper place in your own self, in your experience. And so it sort of crosses a barrier that the sort of more intellectual versions of communication cannot, because it resonates with and vibrates with an aspects of yourself that does not communicate in an intellectual way. It communicates with feeling, with sort of direct knowledge and interface with experience. And so that music creates an experience that speaks to that deeper part of yourself in a way that other things don't. And when we say music that sort of speaks to your soul, that is our, like I was saying last week, our sort of instinctual remembering that there is a deeper aspect of ourselves that sort of calls us to be aware of it, that sort of calls out for us to know it. And music is one of those things that sort of more naturally speaks to that part of ourself. And it's the same thing when we associate that word soul. When we say soul music, we also have soul food. But in both of these cases, they speak to a more sort of deeper emotional place within us in a way that sort of regular or sort of non-soul things do not. But in either case, they are more beneath the surface, or they penetrate deeper into who we are than sort of regular stuff.
Nick, I think you can explain this a little better, your wording. I see music throughout the years as being very therapeutic, that people find not just stress, but from a deeper place, that release from that vibration. Speak to that a little bit as well, because I think that is part of what has carried us as Africans to where we are today.
Very much so, yeah. It is I think, the inner knowledge that you are not confined to this physical material experience. And that regardless of whatever it is you're experiencing in this trial of life, there is a deeper vibration or a deeper current that is still there that allows you to reconnect with that aspect of self, with spirit, that reminds you that the true source of your resilience, the true source of your sustenance is in that deep place, and it cannot be extinguished. It is never severed or broken by any physical thing, despite the harshness of what it is you may experience. And so I think it is a refreshing, spiritually refreshing experience to be reminded of that connection through the vibration of music.
Questions or comments, anyone?
I want to return to when my dad was talking about the nature of the self. I want to see if that question was answered in a satisfactory way. Otherwise, I want to go continue with that concept. Are you there? Dad, Richard O.
I'm there.
There
I'm
you-
there. So from my perspective, you can say not fully, so have at it.
Well,
But that's me. I don't
yeah.
know about other people.
Can you re-ask, or what part of that question did you still want to talk about?
Well, I still go back to the beginning. I mean, yeah. What I was originally asking, and all of this speaks in and out of that, but still to try to, and I need some help maybe, because I don't know how well I can articulate it, but to go at the concept of self head on, but in the context of what we discussed the last weeks about ancestors, about reincarnation, about moving on to planes of existence. So if you think of yourself as for sake of conversation, it's hard to get away from using the words. What happens to me when I transition, and how does that continue to be? In what form, etc. I'm reminded of, let's say, a movie that I liked called Contact. I don't know if anybody remembers it, where the young woman who was very interested in the stars, sky. Anyway, at one point in the movie, her father, who's passed away, comes to speak to her in a call it a dreamlike state, but he comes in a physical presentation, and he said the reason he did that was because that would put her at ease and she could more readily understand that. So that's one way to understand it. But again, that's still a kind of construct that's very important and useful. But then you have the Buddhist notion that it's ultimately an illusion. Now, we can say quickly, yes, when you are fully connected to the source of all, then your sense of self is, again, the language is clumsy, is part of the whole. So it's just that notion of, I mean, I just think it's a fundamental question people have in the back of their minds if they're honest. What happens to me?
I got you. Okay.
The notion of me, right? And then you have other religions that help give you understandings which you cannot intellectualize really to understand. You have to, let's say with the Buddhists, you have to learn it through meditation and that experience of connection. Probably the same thing with the Indian or Native American or other faiths, understandings like that. So it's just that, it's the fundamental questions. Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? What happens to me when I leave? And what is the notion of me that's part of that journey? I kind of get it through this life, but beyond. Is that saying too much? Okay.
No, that makes sense. Okay. So I would like to address that. I'll just sort of go off. If anybody has any questions, of course, we can address those as well. So it's a little bit, that's particularly the sort of an example of the way in which the intellect struggles to understand its true, well, the true nature of the spirit that it is housed within. The intellect, and our sort of intellectual definition of self, changes over time, over our lifetimes, as we make our transition out of this physical realm into other realms of reality. But the nature of the self is not extinguished. The true nature of the self is not the intellect, it is the awareness, it is the consciousness that you are, and that is spirit. That is not extinguished, of course. As we're already familiar with in many other religious traditions, the nature of the soul or whatever, you just are you in another realm.
Can I interrupt right there just for a second?
Yeah.
I have had experiences, and I'm sure others have, generally in nature, where I've completely lost any concept or sense of self and felt very much a part of, we overuse these terms, I know, one with what was around me. I was in a forest, things like that for a period of time and just sat still, et cetera, et cetera. So in the context of what you just said, how do you explain that sense of the notion of self kind of disappearing?
So
Or
you,
maybe becoming so unimportant as a concept of separate than something. I'm not sure.
that's what it is. That is what it is. I think that concept where the self does not exist, coming out of the Eastern tradition and Buddhism, is not well understood. It is, so when you lose your sense of self, like in the example where you experience in nature, you experienced that, well, what is it that was doing the experiencing? That is the self. And what you lost is the ego definition, where that sets up boundaries between you and some other thing that is previously perceived to be not self, quote unquote. All things are part of the self, the sort of greater universal cosmic self that we become aware of when we let go of our intellectual, egotistical sort of definitions that exist on a subconscious level, as well as a conscious level that we place on ourselves. So that concept coming out of Buddhism, I believe, is correct, but it's confusing in the way that we attempt to intellectually interpret it.
Well, it's no surprise to me that it's too easily expressed without a real understanding, as so many things are, like karma, etc. But I get the notion that the ego has a purpose in this existence, in this life. It helps you to organize and distinguish between, call it light and darkness. Now, sometimes it can be too strong. So in that sense, it's useful to present a concept of self to you, if you like, to help you navigate. But so my question was, beyond that more mundane, ephemeral use, what are we talking about? And I get what you're saying if we detach it from the way the ego kind of structures it to be useful to us. Now, that's not to say it can be damaging, because based on ignorance or lack of understanding, we can sort of be pushed in the wrong directions. But so maybe that's the way to kind of hold the two notions in your mind, if you like, at the same time. I don't know. I'm sorry, people, if this is not where you want to go, but anyway.
Well, see, that's the thing. The difficulty of holding those two notions in the mind is a problem that the intellect has. Is not a problem that the spirit has, or your capacity to experience what that means has. And it is, like we've said in here, the example of the drop is in the ocean. What I'm saying is the drop is not lost. The drop is still a drop. But it is the drop experiencing the entire ocean moving through it. And in that way, understanding how the self is not separate from anything. And yet, it is still an entity that is not destroyed or extinguished or dissolved, if you get my meaning. And that is the fundamental paradox of being being the creator and yet being a creation of the creator. That paradox is one that the intellect deals with. It is not one that the spirit has a problem with, because there are no paradoxes. And of course, that's difficult to think about. But when we transition, when we leave this physical body, you are still a self. It's just that none of the things that we on a deep level have used to understand the form that the self was in, or that the self that we were, none of those things that we used to understand that, well, actually, I shouldn't say none, but a major part of that, the physical experience of it, is no longer present. And so there is a process of learning to understand or know yourself within a new context. It is sort of a little bit like when we come into this physical experience, we are babies and we have to learn how to deal with it. When we leave, there's it's not quite the same, like we don't have to start over or anything like that, but we have to learn what it means to exist within in that environment. And we have to understand that the self we experience ourselves to be has changed in a somewhat more superficial way, but the core, the spirit, the spark, the awareness, the ability to perceive, to know, and to remember, which is what we're talking about when we say conscious awareness, that is maintained. That goes nowhere. It is only the context that it exists in that is changed.
Okay, so could you say then, in sort of an oversimplified way, the notion of self allows us to learn, but when we reach what, let's say, the Indians call nirvana, which would be, you know, or the chakras through the light at the top of the head, we don't need, there's nothing more to learn. We're in total unity. So at that time, the concept of self, which is changing maybe with each iteration, is what dissipates into oneness.
The self experiences total oneness, yes, but the self does not dissipate, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I see involved in this thing about self is and ego is that ego is not a bad thing when it's a motivator. Ego becomes a bad thing when it becomes selfish. Ego used in the right way will motivate you to find out who you are or to search for who you are in terms of that energy that only guides you. And what I mean by that is, even though all of us have energy, or all of us are energy rather, then our prioritizing of thoughts are different. Our prioritizing of how we speak is different. And if we use ego in the right context as a motivator, then it does not become a problem. Because when we transition out of these bodies, I do believe that we hold on to a sense of who we are in terms of our function while we were in this body. Yet we are no longer separated in the way that we were separated in our bodies. We become one with the ocean, as opposed to that drop being out of the ocean, which means that we are still spiritual, whether we are in this body or out. Our functionality is different, and our thoughts are clearer. Thank you. That's what I think anyway. Any questions about that?
I just want to say, yeah, I agree. It's like the drop has, again, free access to the ocean, or to a much more wider part of the ocean. And the only thing I'm saying with regards to my dad's question is that there's we hit the paradox. You are both an individual sense of self, and you are universal oneness. And there's no really way to intellectually parse that. It is just the nature of the experience that you can interface with. But there is no loss of anything.
I wanted to add some things to all that has been said. As Nick said, you can't intellectualize it. And well, first of all, everyone subjectively experiences self all the time, but that self that we are subjectively experiencing is different. But as Nick said, at no point, for example, are you in the ocean connected to all of the water one and the same. Subjectively, it may be the case at any moment. You do not experience that from a wide-eyed open standpoint, maybe. In terms of not being able, or the reason why one gets stuck in not being able to understand that paradox is because that paradox cannot be understood just with the intellect, because the intellect is almost, it's like it's a human thing. The intellect is an ability to exist or to be a being in a human form, in a sense. However, the intellect does not work and is not capable of understanding the self that we are. So if we're just using our intellect, our self is limited to human. When you think about meditating, Richard, when you mentioned Buddhism and all these other things, when you feel one with nature, you talk about music and all these other things. It's not your intellect that is actually involved so much in that particular experience. It's as if you have let the intellect go, and now you're more so feeling, or with your emotions, you're connecting all things that are not necessarily directly tied or not directly tied to the intellect. Those things are then taking place. When it was mentioned earlier today about soul food, yeah, you can think this food tastes really good, but anyone would be completely lost in describing that food, trying to verbalize it. You would never accurately do it because it is emotion. It is something that is a feeling that, and a wisdom and an understanding that goes beyond actual thinking about it. It is something that is a language, a universal language, even in a sense, that everyone is connected to and can feel and understands what is being communicated, but in a different way, again, from an intellectual standpoint. In terms of, and this wasn't mentioned at all, but Pastor Richard mentioned, we want to mention that the ego in itself is not bad. Being human is not bad. When Nick mentioned that we are both the creator and part of the creation, we are God experiencing itself in different ways in each and every one of our experiences at every single moment. That's what we are. So from that particular standpoint, it's like being connected, but also embracing being human, but not limiting yourself and knowing that you are not just human. The reason why, as I guess, human beings, generally speaking, we have a problem with death, it is because we do not see or understand or even believe in ourself beyond that of a human. The more that we are connected and know and experience that self, or the part of ourself that is beyond human, the more we are comfortable with transition and embrace persisting on after transition, but just in a different form, in a sense.
Yeah, so I think the key thing here is finding balance, and that's a very Buddhist thing to say. And if you're starting from a place where you don't know yourself, obviously it's like a record that's sort of, I don't know how to say it. Anyway, something going in a circle. It's like trying to throw a pot that's not centered, right? So there's nothing bad in these constructs or these aspects that are here. Everything is here to help us. The question is how we can or cannot help, sometimes misusing them because we're starting from a place that's off center. That's the hardest thing in throwing a pot, is pulling the pot into be centered. At least in my experience, I made some pretty crazy pots when I was going through my pottery phase. But I mean, so that's a good analogy for me. And I get what Nick is saying about the idea of self, and
Yeah.
how it's all meant to be constructive and to help teach, to help us to learn. It's just how we use it.
And yeah, and thank you, Master Sheldon, for that explanation, which is very good. And let me add one sort of final thing to this part of the question I want to respond to. When you make your transition, when we make our transition, when we die, you obviously the death process is dependent on circumstances and in terms of how pleasant or unpleasant it may be. But the self that is going through that process, on some level, you can't know until you do. But what I'm saying is that you can do now. The self that you experience yourself to be doesn't go anywhere. It is a little bit like 1 minute you are experiencing what it's like to have a physical body, still in possession of your awareness, your memories, etc. The next minute, you don't have a body, but you're still you. And there's sort of more to that, quote, afterlife experience as you make that transition deeper and deeper into it. But I just wanted to make that clear. You experience yourself 1 moment in a body, you experience yourself the next moment, not in a body.
And for me anyway, an important aspect I think to underline this with is it's not a contest. It's not a race. It's not about getting from point A to point Z. You need to be relaxed and open to quote unquote develop, advance, and where you transition, at what point you are when you transition, that's where you are, and the universe will put you in the right place to continue that journey, if I understand it correctly. So it's not about, I got to be this place before I leave. Now, if you can be, fine. It would be probably more peaceful in a sense, in that sense, more enjoyable, but it isn't something to be quote unquote worried about, because again, that just gets in front of you and inhibits you even further, right?
It can, yeah. But I even after you make your transition, there's more learning to be had. So it's not like,
No, I'm saying that.
right.
And I'm saying, so
But I want to say, like, it's not like 1 second before you die, oh, you had a negative thought. Oh no. No, that's not it.
no, but the Buddhists do say that if 1 second before you die, your essence, or whatever the right word is, you open to what truth is available in the universe, that can be have a very profound effect on, for want of a better way to say it, where you go next. So you don't have to spend a lifetime trying to get there. You can have that, what do we call it, an epiphany?
That's true.
That
I believe
touches me as being true, yeah.
Yeah, I think that is very much a possibility. I would say for the vast majority of us, of people, it's you could say the average of their vibration that sort of determines what the nature of the quote unquote afterlife experience is, and then how they move on from that. But I don't want to place limiters on that concept either. I think there's more flexibility, and it's not like something is determined for us. It's we gravitate to where we want to go, as I think
Right.
more how it
Yeah,
works.
I guess I just want to go back to the point, and maybe I'm just talking about myself, and then I apologize to everybody on here for putting you through this.
Well,
But
up here
so
tomorrow.
it's not, again, it's not a contest. It's not a pass-fail proposition. It's a journey.
Correct. There is no failure if your desire to learn at least one thing in one lifetime
Right.
is present.
You got plenty of lifetimes, right, available, right? Right, so this, whatever's in our subconscious about hell and negative stuff is just, it's been put there.
Correct.
And we need to face it in ourselves and then, and take its energy away from us because it's just in the way.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know, is this anything anybody else thinks about it? Maybe I shouldn't even ask, I don't know, but, and I apologize if it took the conversation in a direction that, well, no, I'm not apologizing, because I think it's helpful. Anyway, I'll be quiet.
Hey, Nick,
Uh,
this is Charles again.
Hey,
Where's the mind and the brain involved in this,
so
or what we're talking about?
yeah, so the mind is the thing that continues. But understand the mind is just a part of the experience of you. It's very difficult again to talk about intellectually, but the mind is what is the only thing that there is. And another word for mind is spirit. Spirit is the only thing that there is. The physical brain is the sort of way the complexity of mind is translated into the physical vehicle. If that makes sense. But as in, like, when the Egyptians did their funeral stuff, they threw the brain away. The brain is in some sense, a receiver of wavelength. The mind is the source of the wavelength, and it is the source of our sense of self. And you could think of that sort of like a TV with an antenna. The signal that the TV uses to make its display doesn't come from the TV. But if you damage the TV, then what the TV is able to display also becomes damaged. But the source of it is not within the physical thing. So when we make our transition, we are still a mind. Does that help?
I got you, Nick, because when I lost my leg, this guy can see it lost, but in my mind, it wasn't lost.
Mm-hmm. Have you experienced that sensation of feeling like there's, like, I'm not exactly sure what it feels like, but static electricity, or it feels like your leg hurts even though your leg is not there? That's like a thing people who have lost limbs and stuff experience, like phantom limb syndrome or whatever it's called. But that's in some way it's quite almost literally like that. It's energetic static, because the physical configuration is no longer there, even though there's an attempt to sort of interface with it. But anyway, yep.
all right. It seems like a good place to take a pause, and we will resume here tomorrow. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the discussions, thoughts, questions, and if you have anything, jot it down and be ready to begin there tomorrow. And hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.